Curfew extended. Travelling between districts barred. First COVID-19 patient in Sri Lanka recovers. 5 more tested positive for COVID-19. Total stands at 91. Prime Minister convenes a party leaders meeting. Japan's Abe says for the first time that postponing Olympics is an option. ICC sets deadline for the decision.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. On to your lead story now. The government explained matters with regard to the curfew imposed in the country. Let's first take a look at that.
The ongoing curfew in the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, Puttalam and all 5 districts in the northern province will be lifted at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The curfew will be reimposed at 12 noon and will continue till 6 a.m. on Friday before being imposed again at 12 noon on the same day. The curfew in the remaining districts was reenacted at 2 p.m. today and will be lifted at 6 a.m. on Thursday before being reimposed at 12 noon the same day. Travelling between any districts in the island has been completely prohibited. Also, transporting tourists from place to place has also been banned. Farming activities are allowed to continue even during the curfew hours. Transportation of rice and other essential items and vegetables is permitted.
The first Sri Lankan patient who tested positive for COVID-19 left the IDH in Angkor today following a complete recovery. He is a 52-year-old tour guide who tested positive for COVID-19 on the 11th of March. Now, the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jayasinghe, said that the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases has now risen to 91. Whereas at 5 a.m. today, the number of patients were 85 and are receiving treatment at hospitals. Now, out of these 85 patients, 77 are admitted at the IDH, while the other 8 are receiving treatment at the Valikanda Base Hospital. 227 patients are under medical supervision at hospitals. Now, when it comes to the spread of COVID patients, as at 5 p.m. today, Colombo reported 19 patients while Gampaha reported 10. Kalutara 8 patients, Puttalam 6, Ratnapura 3 patients and 1 patient each from Kurunegala, Gaul, K-Gaul, Batiklo, Badulla and Jaffna. 32 are currently at quarantine centers. Now, when it comes to the age distribution, majority of the patients are between the ages of 41 to 50 with a percentage of 35.6. 17.2 patients are between 17.2% of patients are between the ages of 31 and 40. Now, moving on, 71% of the patients are male, while 29% of these patients are female. Media spokesperson of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Samantha Ananda, expressed these views to Newsfirst today.
And there was an unfortunate incident in National Hospital. One patient attended to the hospital, did not declare his contact history. Therefore, a lot of doctors and other staff exposed to him. Now they are in quarantine centers. So day by day, if we have to quarantine the health staff, imagine the situation that country will face. There will be lack of staff, lack of doctors to look after the patients. So therefore, I humbly request from the people, if you have any kind of a contact with a corona patient or a person who has come from a vulnerable country, please declare it. It is nothing to get stigmatized. It is nothing you have done wrong. It is just a normal virus infection which has bad consequences, of course. So you don't need to get afraid or you don't need to get scared to declare this. It is your duty to declare this so that the health sector can trace the contacts and take the necessary steps to prevent this disease getting transmitted.
Now, the epidemiology unit has released the exposure history of 78 patients in Sri Lanka who were tested positive for COVID-19. I have here with me Newsfirst Chaturanga Hapuarachi to give us a brief explanation about the exposure history. Chaturanga?
Yes, Azra, we spoke to Dr. Prasad Kolambage of the Presidential Task Force to Control the Spread of COVID-19. Now, according to his explanation, as you correctly mentioned, this is the exposure history of the identified patients as of 11th March, and you can see when this comes up on your screen how these people have interacted with the society. On one end of the screen you can see where these patients were from or where they came into the country from.
Majority seems to be from Italy.
Yes, the graph shows people who had come from Italy, from Singapore, from India, tour groups that arrived in the country, so on and so forth. And on the middle center of the graph you can see the patient with the identification number that has been given to each patient, and then of course on the other side you can see where they are from in terms of whether they were from a quarantine center or whether they had been outside in the society making connections with outsiders. Now, one factor that was mentioned by Dr. Kolamage was that when this is in the society, of course this spreads from these individuals. For example, if you are to take the first patient, if you are to take a look at the first patient was identified and has had connections with 72 people in the society, and according to Dr. Kolamage, number 2 and 3, these two patients over here had traveled to the country together, and they had relationships with 56 and 17 people in the society respectively. Now again, if you go down this graph you can see that certain patients are from quarantine centers, certain patients has had relationships with people in the society. For example, patient number 27, the identified patient number 27 has had connections with 262 people within the society. Now this brings us to the very important factor where people have been asked to carry out social distancing or self isolation so that this can be stopped. Now another question that was asked during our primetime Sinhalese news bulletin on Sirasa TV was that what happens to the patients that have come into contact with these people, and what happens to these people and the people they come into contact with. That was a question that was raised, and that is where Dr. Kolamage mentioned that is why these steps have been taken by the health authorities, and that is why steps have been taken to ask people to remain in self-isolation. If symptoms are shown, that is why these people are asked to take precautionary methods to stop the spread, and that is why the health authorities along with the security forces are imposing curfews in the country, asking people to maintain 1 meter distance wherever they are, asking them to adhere to health instructions, guidelines provided by the government and the necessary institutions as well. This is the graph that shows the exposure history. Again, this makes it very important for us to identify and understand why we need, as people, we need to carry out our social responsibility to make sure that we can stop this from further going into the society. One more factor that was mentioned by Dr. Kolamage was that if this goes further into the society, it is difficult to identify the patterns or how this virus will spread among the general public. He brought in an example and he said in Italy that is exactly what has happened. They were allowed to go into the society. This spread took place in Italy and they couldn't take adequate steps to curtail it. Sri Lanka has taken steps, and we have our social responsibility, our own, to take care of our country, to take care of you and I, and therefore it is our responsibility, Azra, to ensure that we take a look at these details that are available to us, understand what these tell us and not panic and be afraid, rather have this information in our head and take necessary steps to prevent this from further spreading.
Thank you, Chaturanga, for joining us. Before we head into our next story, we have a release issued by the leading supermarket chains. Leading supermarket chains, including the state-owned Satosa, has set out guidelines for its customers on how to shop during the curfew relaxed period for them to restock their supplies. The supermarket chains asked its customers to cover their mouth and nose when entering the outlets with a mask or a handkerchief or a piece of cloth. Use debit credit cards for the payments and minimize using cash. If using cash, please produce change money. While the supermarkets limit the people entering at a given time to 8 to 20 and a maximum of 20 minutes shopping time will be allocated per person. The customers were requested to maintain a distance of 1 meter while they are remaining in the queues. Now, the curfew imposed in the country was lifted for 8 hours for certain districts today. People arrived at stores to purchase essential goods during this time period.
Supermarkets and stores were crowded after the curfew was temporarily lifted this morning. While some people undertook precautionary measures, some were seen without face masks. Customers formed queues at supermarkets with a distance of 1 meter from each other. However, this was not the situation in some stores. This was the manner in which people were seen in groups in certain areas. Medical centers were also opened today in some areas. This was the situation at fuel stations. Long queues were witnessed at banks. Large crowds of people flocked to purchase vegetables and fruits from stores. This was the situation in Kegal this morning. Residents of Dambulla visited the Dambulla town to fulfill their requirements. People of Monoragala and Matra were also seen at stores when the curfew was lifted this morning. Police officers had been deployed for the security of the people during this period. The Beruwala fish market was also crowded with people today. Meanwhile, people who were not wearing face masks were warned by the police while they were out on the streets. The Narammala police undertook measures to remove people who were not wearing face masks on the road. However, residents of the Muttur and Topur areas in Trincomalee who visited stores were not wearing face masks. Meanwhile, people in some areas experienced difficulties while purchasing essential goods after the curfew was lifted this morning.
දැන් පැයකට වැඩිය පොලිමේ ඉඳලා මේ ඇතුළට ගියපුවාම බඩු නැහැ.
ඉතින් මොනවද නැහැ මේ සැමන් ටින් එකයි මේ ටිකයි විතරයි ගත්තේ. නෑනේ ගන්න දෙයක් නැහැ නේ දීකි. පාම් පිටි නැහැ මොනවද නැහැ.
අපි මල්ලියප්පේ සතරට ගියා රුපියලක බඩුවක් නැහැ.
Residents of Anuradhapur experienced similar difficulties when they arrived to purchase goods from a Satusa retail outlet today.
පොලිමේ ඉන්නකොට කියනවා මේ සැමනුයි පරිප්පුයි ඒව නැල්ලු. ඉතින් මොකද්ද කියන්නකෝ අපි කීයට දාවේ?
Similar scenes were witnessed outside a Satosam outlet in Matale as well. This was the queue witnessed outside the Satosa outlet in Ampara before it was opened today.
Now arrangements have been made to provide a package of essential food items to the public in the coming days. I beg your pardon, the process of packing these essential goods commenced today.
This package will include 6 essential food items. The packaging took place at the Satosa warehouse complex in Colombo today. Satosa, together with Lanka Satosa, is currently in the process of preparing packages of 6 essential food items to be distributed to the general public. The distribution of these packages will be done with the assistance of the forces in the near future. This operation is in line with the government's action plan, and our employees are currently working tirelessly in this endeavour. These food items will be distributed to the consumer as soon as possible. Meanwhile, dry rations were packed at the civil security camp in Valisara today. We are currently in the process of packaging food items into separate parcels. These parcels will be distributed to the general public at a concessionary price, starting from this evening or tomorrow. We hope to bring these food items close to your houses. These food parcels will not be given free of charge, but only at a concessionary rate. Meanwhile, the Special Economic Centre in Dabola witnessed the presence of a large crowd today, with the arrival of farmers and traders from various parts of the island. There were certain people who refused to wear face masks and cleanse their hands. Therefore, we discussed this matter with the President. We decided to obtain the assistance of the Police Special Task Force to maintain order at the Dabola Economic Centre. We have implemented a mechanism to provide the monthly allowance for senior citizens and the differently abled through the Grama Niladhari offices.
Meanwhile, the Secretary to the President has instructed the heads of state institutions to ensure that the state mechanism does not become inactive while curbing the spread of COVID-19.
Issuing a statement, the President's media division stated that the President's secretary has informed that the current period is not a holiday and that state officials are required to work from home by communicating using remote methods. Meanwhile, the government has requested the public to avoid crowding at fuel stations, liquor stores, shops and restaurants, and to avoid going on trips once the curfew is lifted. The President's media division stated that steps would be taken to distribute sufficient food, water and fuel, and pointed out it is the responsibility of the people to refrain from purchasing excessive amounts of goods. The government has requested the people to utilize the period of the curfew to grow vegetables at their homes and to clean the environment surrounding their residences. While urging to pay attention towards the elderly and the children, the government advised the public to send one person from each household to purchase essential goods.
Earlier on in the bulletin, we spoke to you about the social responsibility that each of us has to curb or stop the spreading of COVID-19 in our country. Now, a short while ago, police headquarters issued a statement regarding those who are yet to undergo quarantine after returning to Sri Lanka from Italy. The police has requested for the public's assistance in locating the following individuals in order to direct them for quarantine. There are 12 individuals in the list that was sent out by the police headquarters a short while ago. However, majority, or 9 to be exact, from that list are pictures or details of children. Therefore, we have decided to air the pictures of the adults that are shown in the list released by the police headquarters. However, this information has been sent out by the police headquarters, so the complete list will be available on www.newsfirst.lk shortly after the primetime English news bulletin. The 3 individuals, the adults in the list of names sent out by the police seeking public assistance are Hettiarachige Alfred Tisera, Raj Mithun Tevaraja, Shirani Piris Daraniya Galage. Any information regarding the individuals on these photographs could be provided via the hotlines 119 071 859 1864, 011 244 4480 or 011 244 4481. Again, these are details and pictures released by the police headquarters seeking public assistance to locate the following individuals in order to direct them for quarantine. These people are yet to undergo quarantine after returning to Sri Lanka from Italy. There are 12 individuals mentioned in this list. However, 9 of the 12 are pictures and details of children. Therefore, on our primetime news bulletin, we have decided to show the details of the adults in the list. However, the full list will be available on our website www.newsfirst.lk right after the English primetime news bulletin, since this information has been released to the police headquarters. The state has taken several key decisions as part of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. These steps cover a range of sectors from banking services to fuel supplies.
Bank employees can now report for duty using their official identity cards. DIG Ajit Rohana noted that whilst curfew is in place, bank employees can carry out essential services requiring them to report to their workplaces using their official identity cards. The Road Development Authority has announced that expressways can be used as per usual in areas where curfew has been lifted, but asks that these roads be used for essential needs only. In areas where curfew is in effect, expressways are only open to essential services and individuals with curfew permits. Postmaster General Ranjit Aryaratna says steps have been taken to issue senior citizens and disability allowances via Grama Niladaris. Aryaratna said beneficiaries would contact their Grama Niladari to obtain their allowances. The Postmasters General added that appointments should be sought from Grama Niladaris prior to meeting them in line with public health guidelines. These steps have been taken to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on vulnerable groups, including the elderly and those with existing health conditions. 4 fuel trains were dispatched from Kolanawa today to Anuradhapura, Batticaloa, Peradeniya and Katnayaka. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation says that fuel is being supplied without any hindrance or fear of shortage. Sipetco chairman Sumit Veerasinghe assured the public that there are plentiful stocks of fuel to meet the current demand even after curfew is lifted, and as such the public must not panic by fuel. 480 filling stations are in operation across all police divisions in the country in order to supply fuel for essential services.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa announced a group of reliefs to set up a fund to combat the COVID-19 in Sri Lanka. The President's Media Division said the fund is named the COVID-19 Healthcare and Social Security Fund. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has decided to grant a raft of concessions with effect from the 23rd of March for the general public who are faced with difficulties due to COVID-19. The statement elaborating the concession said that President's Secretary has instructed the relevant authorities to immediately implement the concessions for the people. The concessions stated in the statement are as follows: the settlement of all revenue and value-added taxes, payment of renewal of driver's license, payment of electricity and water bills that are below 15,000 rupees, payment of rates, the validity of bank checks, payment of monthly credit card bills of below 50,000 rupees will be extended till the 30th of April. The charging of leasing installments of three-wheeler owners have been suspended for 6 months, while the charging of loan payments in installment basis of non-executive staff of both public and private sectors from their salaries have been suspended till the 30th of May 2020. The charging of personal loans below 1 million rupees granted by all banks have been suspended for 3 months. For credit cards used in local transaction with a limit of 50,000 rupees will be set a maximum interest rate of 15% and the minimum monthly charge will be reduced by 50%. All banks will remain open at times when the police curfew is not in effect to provide the best service for customers. Now we have details of these stories and this particular story in particular on our website www.newsfirst.lk. Moving on, the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has pledged to donate $5 million to the SARC fund that was formed to eradicate the COVID-19. According to the President's Media Division, President has made this donation during a video conference with the state leaders of SARC, also chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 15th of March. United National Party leader Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the president does not have the financial powers after the 30th of April until the new parliament is convened. He stressed that this problem could be resolved by reconvening parliament.
In a statement posted on social media, Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed the following views with regard to curbing the spread of COVID-19. Unfortunately, certain decisions in the country were not made at the right time. Some decisions were delayed. Initially, there was no mechanism to quarantine those arriving from countries which had been hit by the virus. As a result of the flaws in this system and the irresponsible conduct of certain people, the movement of affected people among the society increased. The number of affected people who are still out in the open can increase when compared to the number of patients being reported now. The government has not revealed its entire plan to protect the country and the people. Certain urgent measures undertaken by the government to mitigate the spread of the virus resulted in some inconveniences. The manner in which trains crowded with people left Colombo last Friday is one such example of this. The UNP leader pointed out the importance of convening parliament in order to allocate the required funds to curb the spread of COVID-19. The first coronavirus patient was reported in December last year. From that day on until the day parliament was dissolved, the government did not make a request in parliament to allocate funds required to combat the virus. Funds were requested only to settle the bills for building contractors. Funds have been allocated for the government through the vote on account until the 31st of April. From that day onwards until the new parliament is convened again, the president does not have powers to approve additional expenses. We cannot predict as to when the new parliament would be convened. This is a crisis. This can be resolved only by reconvening the old parliament and approving the required funds. Due to the coronavirus, the channels through which foreign exchange flow to the country have been obstructed. The export sector has tanked. As a result of that, the rupee will depreciate. The cost of living will increase, while the income of the people will also decrease. When the government's revenue drops, the money allocated for essential services such as health will have to be limited. Ranil Wickremesinghe also commented on the importance of working in a united manner in the face of the current situation in the country. I request the government once again to understand the seriousness of this situation. That is why I am repeatedly requesting the government to hold talks with religious and social leaders along with health experts and other relevant organizations and to implement a common and efficient plan. We are ready to unconditionally support the government's efforts to combat the coronavirus. However, the government should make a decision on the basis of policy. They should face this situation with the assistance of everyone. If they conduct themselves to gain political advantage and prioritize short-term political goals, I wish to remind the government that a country will not be left for them to achieve their political ambitions.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has responded to the remarks made by several factions, including United National Party leader Ranil Wickremesinghe, regarding the government's spending. The Prime Minister stated that when the Parliament is dissolved, the Prime Minister has the powers to release funds from the Consolidated Fund for the operation of state bodies. He pointed out that the President has been vested with these powers according to Section 50, subsection 3 of the Constitution. Therefore, Prime Minister Rajapaksa stated that the people do not have to be afraid as to whether the government has sufficient funds for its efforts to combat COVID-19 and to ensure the operation of other state services. While alleging that two factions of the United National Party are attempting to gain political advantage using the situation surrounding COVID-19, the Prime Minister claimed that the efforts undertaken by the Good Governance government to cut off the provision of funds for the new government had proved futile. He condemned the efforts of certain factions to paralyze the country in the backdrop of a pandemic by challenging the financial powers vested by the Constitution upon the President. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has called for a party leaders meeting tomorrow. The meeting is scheduled to take place at Temple Trees.
Former Minister Viduru Wickramanayake expressed his views regarding the proposal to convene Parliament.
Some people are calling for the Parliament to be reconvened. Why is that? Why spend 9.2 million rupees to reconvene Parliament? On days that the Parliament is not convened, it costs 8.7 million rupees. All these costs can be recovered if the parliament is converted into a quarantine centre. There is another place. We heard that the government owns the previous building of the Agriculture Ministry. Use that as well. Use the official residences of ministers as quarantine centres. Make those sacrifices. We have recommended to make this house as a quarantine centre.
In news overseas, in Europe, Italy has moved to stop all domestic travel as more than 5,400 people have died in the country from COVID-19. According to data collected, more than 14,500 people have died from COVID-19 globally. An estimated 98,000 of the 336,000 people who have been diagnosed with the disease across the world have recovered. Syria, Gaza and Montenegro have confirmed their first case of COVID-19.
Authorities in India have placed more than 80 cities and districts across the country under stringent lockdown after cases of coronavirus were detected there. The state shutdowns came during a 14-hour voluntary curfew that Prime Minister Narendra Modi said would test India's ability to fight the pandemic. With over 150 new cases confirmed in the last 24 hours, the number of COVID-19 patients in Pakistan reached 803. All major markets, shopping malls, restaurants and other public spots remained closed in most parts of the southern Sindh and southwestern Balochistan, the two worst-hit provinces. Authorities closed Karachi and Sukkur airports, suspending air travel between Sindh and the rest of the country. The UAE is suspending all passenger and transit flights for 2 weeks, while Saudi Arabia has imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. The coronavirus death in the US rose to 471, while the number of cases reached 35,224. New York City and Washington State, where the country's first cases were reported in late January, are the most affected, with 99 and 96 fatalities respectively. Turkey's flag carrier suspended nearly all international flights today until the 17th of April. The airline said in a statement that the only exceptions are New York, Washington, Hong Kong, Moscow and Addis Ababa. The airline will continue its domestic flights with cutbacks and cargo operations as planned. Uzbekistan will lock down its capital city Tashkent from the 24th of March. With all but one of Uzbekistan's 46 confirmed cases registered in the city of more than 2.5 million, the government has already shut down public transport in the capital and ordered most businesses to switch to remote working. Indonesia reported 65 new cases of coronavirus, bringing the total number of cases in Southeast Asia's largest economy to 579. The number of people killed by the virus rose by 1 today to 49, while 30 patients have recovered from the disease. Britain now has access to 12,000 ventilators after it brought more from existing providers, and its manufacturers are stepping up further production. Health Minister Matt Hancock said, quote, "We've made serious progress on that. There's now over 12,000 and we've managed to get to it," end quote. Hong Kong will ban all non-residents from entering the financial hub from Wednesday as it tries to halt a recent spike in the virus infections from people returning from abroad. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said, quote, "From midnight of the 25th of March, all non-Hong Kong residents flying in from overseas will not be allowed into the city," end quote, adding that the order would be in place for at least 2 weeks. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Germany has risen to 22,672 and 86 people have died from the disease. That compares with 18,610 cases and 55 deaths yesterday. It was warned that the actual numbers were likely higher as not all local health authorities had submitted their figures over the weekend. At least 3 doctors have died in the Philippines, where thousands of medical workers braved to treat patients despite the lack of protective gear. According to the hospital and colleagues, several other doctors were reported to be in critical condition, while hundreds of healthcare workers were in quarantine after being exposed to the virus in various hospitals in Manila. Australians began living under strict new lockdown rules today as coronavirus cases topped 1,600 and authorities denied entry to a cruise ship carrying hundreds of people on board complaining of respiratory illness.
Tokyo 2020 Olympics chief Yoshiro Mori said that organizers would consider postponement of the Olympics Games as one of many scenarios that they aim to have ready in 4 weeks, but that the Games would not be cancelled.
Mori told a news conference a team of people from among the International Olympic Committee and Tokyo organizers would discuss how to proceed with the Games. Today, Canada became the first country to boycott the Tokyo Olympic Games due to the coronavirus pandemic, and Australia told its athletes to prepare for an Olympic next year as Japan and IOC flagged the prospect of a postponement for the first time. Under mounting pressure to postpone the Games, the OIC and Japanese government yesterday and today had only partially shifted their position that the Games would go ahead as planned. The torch relay is due to begin on Thursday, and although it is not being cancelled at this stage, Tokyo 2020 organizers said they were considering it.
Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Changa Kurukularatna, speaking to Newsfirst, told us about how important it is to have a positive mindset at a time like this.
Number one, arm yourself with good information because anxiety is related to uncertainty. So look to your Ministry of Health, look to COVID-SL, look to the WHO for good sources of information. Number two, routine. Don't sacrifice your routine just because it's curfew. Number three, plan your day. Get the whole family involved in planning your day and decide what you're going to do. Number four, get creative. Cook together. Meal times are amazing. Share your chores. Number five, exercise. Exercise is really good to get those endorphins going and to keep a healthy immune system. Number six, get some sunlight if you can, at least 1 hour a day. Sunlight is great to lift your moods and also to make some of that really important vitamin D under your skin. Number seven, develop a sense of community. Reach out to one another through social media in a positive way, but not in a negative way.
Sri Lanka Air Force handed over 500 personal protective equipment kits for doctors and medical staff involved in treating COVID-19 patients.
Issuing a statement, the Air Force said that these kits were manufactured at the General Engineering Wing at the Sri Lanka Air Force Base in Katunayake. The 500 personal protective equipment kits were handed over by the Air Force to the Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Bandari Jayawardena, and Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasinghe. Meanwhile, the General Engineering Wing at the Air Force Base in Anuradhapura also manufactured 100 PPE kits. These kits were handed over to Dr. Udaya De Silva at the Anuradhapura Government Hospital. Dr. Udaya De Silva is the designer of the cost-effective personal protective equipment kit, which is being manufactured by the Air Force. The Aeronautical Engineering Wing at Sri Lanka Air Force Base Katunayake has made an apparatus which can be mounted to a Bell 212, Bell 412 or Mi-17 helicopter. This equipment will enable the spraying of disinfected liquids in large quantities from air to highly contaminated areas if required.
A decision has been taken to transform Voice of America broadcasting facility and its premise in Irunavalachilav to a center to treat COVID-19 patients. The center was handed over to health officials today.
Many health officials, security officials and state officials, including Puttalam District Secretary Chandrasiri Bandara, attended this event. The key to the facility, which was under the purview of the Sri Lanka Army, was handed over to the Regional Director of Health Services, Dinusha Fernando, today.
Meanwhile, police have arrested 2 people who were manufacturing illicit liquor during the curfew.
The raid was carried out in the Ranminithan area following information received by the STF headquarters at Kawan Tissapura Tissamaharama. According to our correspondent, the police had seized 40 litres of locally produced illicit liquor.
And that's the wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mazra Hassan. Brian De Cruz brought you the sign language interpretation of our news broadcast tonight. Thank you for joining us. Have a very good night.